I know, guys, it's been a little bit since I've been here talking about Ahsoka. What is going on, everybody? Man, Micah's back with another video. Back here to talk about episodes 4, 5, and 6. Relatively quick. You know, I didn't really have a lot of issues with the episodes. Just starting off with episode 4 alone. What a fire beginning to these 3 consecutive straight fire episodes that Dave Filoni has given us. Episode 4 was basically the samurai duels, right? We had the Kurosawa showdowns with Ahsoka and Marok, and then Balin, and then you had Shin Hati going up against Sabine. Sabine trying to hang in there again, playing with our expectations, thinking like, oh, she might have the force, and she doesn't. What a great joke! What a great moment for us as fans to see that she's, even though she's trying again in episode 6, episode 4 showing that she does not feel the force. I'm hoping that they stay that way and that she accepts that she can't actively use the force in that way, but maybe she's just sensitive and she can sense the force. She can sense it without being able to manipulate it. So I'm hoping that they go in that direction with Sabine. But wow, what an episode 4 to lead into Anakin at the end of the episode. Like, what? Childhood memories galore. And that's one of the things we Star Wars fans appreciate is member berries, especially when they're done right. Because when you think about what should have followed, what should have succeeded, the prequel trilogy is more, if not Anakin, more Luke Skywalker, more of that, as opposed to what we got with the sequel trilogy in episode 7, 8, 9. Those, arguably good movies by themselves. I, of course, honestly am not mad at episode 8, only because of what we have gotten in terms of character development for Luke and for Yoda. The way that Luke was played out in episode 8, I'm honestly not really mad at it. Now, of course, would I like them to showcase Luke in a better light, or maybe even change the direction in which Yoda even went, right? In episode, what was it, 5 or 6 with Luke's training? If Luke could have learned from Yoda's mistake and pivoted in that way in episode 8, I think that definitely would have been better. But those movies, it looks like we're circumventing them. We're skirting around and past them with what we have going on here in Ahsoka. And to see Ahsoka get pulled into the world between worlds, arguably, or not arguably, potentially by Anakin or the daughter, Mirai, I believe that's her name, that is part of the, I don't want to say triune, but the Force itself, right? The cosmic Force. You have the father, you have the son, you have the daughter. Kind of crazy, right? But no, it's not like that. They each represent a side of the Force. The father being the balance, the son being the dark side, and the daughter being the light side. And Ahsoka very much so resembles the light side of the Force in Morai, and Anakin really channeled both sides of the Force, being able to control him, but ultimately we know that his downfall was his imbalance. And the father, back in the Clone Wars, this is a lot of Clone War talk right now, essentially offered Anakin the position to take over for him, meaning that the father knew Anakin's, I don't want to say fate, but the direction that Anakin was going to go, was supposed to go, meaning that he was a chosen one for a reason. And I think we're seeing that played out here in episode 5 of Ahsoka, where he's teaching Ahsoka lessons, not beating her or us over the head with exposition, and allowing the lesson to be learned the way a lesson is supposed to be learned. It's not supposed to be spelled out for you necessarily. You're supposed to learn, you're supposed to understand and recognize and pick up the lesson. And for those who's like kind of talking, mess about the Ahsoka show, it's so interesting how contradictory people can be when it comes to the show, because a lot of times in the past with this show and other shows or movies in general, people get mad at the long-winded exposition or the obvious hitting you over the head, telling you what's happening. And then they get mad in an episode like this where it's not necessarily ambiguous, but they don't outright tell you what the lesson is. And then you get mad because you got to figure it out. I'm like, you got to pick what you want. Ultimately, this show, again, is building off of lore and established content via TV shows and series in Star Wars Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, comic book based content with legends and whatnot, bringing that stuff, canonizing it. There's so much already built history in Star Wars, and it's arguably what, a 40 plus year old genre. You can't get mad when they're starting to pull from that and not necessarily telling you, beating you over the head with, by the way, this is where we're at. And you're supposed to, there is a level of responsibility as a viewer to watch the previous content if you haven't already, if you want to understand what's happening now. A perfect example of that would be the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It officially started around 2006 or 2008 with Iron Man, and then progressed all the way until now, 2023, with over 30 movies and over like 10 TV shows or something like that. So imagine if you're jumping into Marvel now, or maybe the last few years, you would have had to go do your homework to understand where the Avengers are at, where the superheroes are at now. What is this thing that keeps getting mentioned in terms of the blip and the snap and all that? You would have to go do your homework to understand exactly what's happening in the MCU, because you came in late, or you were kind of dibble dabbling with some content here and there, but you never fully fledged yourself. So now that you're trying to catch up, you have some homework to do. And it probably won't feel like homework if you're truly invested into the content, or the lore, the the interest of the show, whatever, the world that you're trying to dive into. That's what I was looking for. It's not going to necessarily be homework. It's going to be fun to go back and watch and try to understand. And thankfully, in this world of YouTube, people have done the due diligence for you to piece together exactly what you need to watch in order to catch yourself up on. People are literally categorizing episodes and eras and chronologically organizing pieces of content in Star Wars to help you understand what's happening in Ahsoka. And you can't even just go do that. You rather complain because you have to go do homework. You're no longer the smart guy in the room. So I find that to be a little interesting and disappointing at the same time, because for a show like Ahsoka that has to do a lot of heavy lifting for Star Wars, and understandably so, we're going to be frustrated, period, with Star Wars because we have not been getting a lot of good content. But for a show that's really trying to lift this heavy burden off of Star Wars and to bring new light and new love to the show, is doing a very, very good job. And I think a lot of us, core OG fans, if you will, are cutting certain things slack because overall it's this much that they're getting wrong in comparison to this much that they're getting right, both in terms of lore, member berries, and overall story and character development. The nitpick, the slight on Ahsoka throughout 6 episodes has been she's kind of boring, or she's kind of not there emotionally, and it makes sense. Yeah, stoic, if you will, and it makes sense from a story perspective because of where she has been at in her life thus far. A lot of things are holding her back and is distracting her, which is why I kind of had a problem in episode 4 as well, of her not being able to sense the problems outside of the ship before the duels and the battles went down. So that was a slight nitpick there. But then also, the way they shot certain moments, and even in episode 3, and how quiet it seemed like it was until you had the little ship battle. And then there's moments of the ship battle where it's like, maybe Ahsoka and Sabine probably should have got shot out the space. But, we're going to kind of overlook it a little bit because overall it's still a breath of fresh air in the world of Star Wars. It's those moments like that, coupled by Sabine also being very, if not stoic, quiet and very serious. And it's like, come on, man, like, can we please add a little bit more flavor to the characters? Because not everybody can be stoic and borderline sinister, and you want people to really get into it like that. They're women. There should be a little bit more emotion there. There should be a little bit more concern than just staring, folding arms, holding hands like that. Bop. Like, come on. So those are some of the nitpicks that we're all going to have, but there's a turning point in episode 5 where she learns a lesson from Anakin and, was able to be saved after falling off the cliff, and is coming into a new version of herself, known as essentially Ahsoka the White, something that I guess Dave has talked about more or less outside of actual Star Wars shows. She was gray, much more down, and now being in white or donning white, she's more hopeful and more high spirited. So it's gonna be interesting to see that. And you already kind of see it in episode 5 with her and how she interacts with the Purgle, and how she interacts with what's his name again, Huyang, and you could tell she feels more in tune. And now going out into hyperspace and coming on over to episode 6, where they give us a lore dump of the century, and it was so pieced together very, very well. We're getting the ancient lore, basically, of Dathomirians going to Peridia, where that's essentially where their hometown or home base was on this planet. And the ring, that it looks like there's a ring, but it's like Purgle or space whale bones, because they basically went there to die, which is kind of crazy. It was like a graveyard. And this is where you get a lot of Baylan action. Baylan is tearing it up in this episode. Shin is tearing it up. She blinks. Like we're getting so much of that in the beginning of the episode. We finally get some more Sabine, and you see Baylan like, hey, I'm holding to my word. We said we're going to bring her here. She can go look for Ezra. It's cool. And I don't know if he can sense Ezra or he's hopeful in Ezra himself, and he's just been low-key playing mercenary / bounty hunter / gray Jedi himself, along with his apprentice, who he assumed to be his daughter. Maybe he senses Ezra as well and is hoping that he can unite with Ezra to take out Thrawn. And maybe he even may try to usurp Ezra also. And then we get a showdown between them. Or maybe he wants Ezra's help to take out Thrawn. So it's interesting from that perspective. But oops, I mentioned his name. Yes, along with the Great Mothers. I know Dathomirians called Mother in like Clone Wars / Rebels. But yes, the Great Mother show up looking all creepy and everything, sensing the Jedi's in their presence, which accordingly is Sabine as of right now. And then, I don't know if maybe they just sense the lightsaber, and more so than her herself, but since she is not necessarily dark like Baylan and Shin, all signs pointed to Sabine, so she gets imprisoned some more. Then the Chimera drops out of the sky later. Bra-ba! Thrawn shows up. Like, what? Looking all spicy, boy. Like, yo, we got Thrawn in the building. Thrawn is officially here. Oh, and he's got the troopers. I saw somebody in the comment section say that the closed caption called them night troopers, which is super fire if that's the case. And then, like, the main leader, I forgot his name, was like Xerox or something like that. His isn't even like the stormtrooper like helmet face anymore. He plated it with gold, and I couldn't tell. I was trying to pay attention, but I can't remember if the other stormtroopers or night troopers also had gold plates on their helmet fragments. But Thrawn got a whole new armor with like red sewed in between their uniforms. What? And then Elsbeth, of course, looking a little silly because she didn't sense whether or not Baylan potentially is turning or had a hidden agenda, although we don't know if that's the case. But Elsbeth is looking like she's slipping in Thrawn's eyes, and Thrawn's like, hold up. Oh, hey, buddy. So, as we progress through the episode, Sabine is let go free on her little dog wolf thing. She goes looking for Ezra. She runs into some assassins. She does an okay job beating them up. I wasn't mad at the choreography, honestly. I mean, what do we expect from it? I mean, she's a Mandalorian, so she's going to be able to hold her own to some degree. I wasn't mad at that. And then when her back was against the wall, she finally pulled out the lightsaber. So I think we're also seeing, if not the conflict within her, I think it's it might be subconscious acceptance that she's not really a Jedi, but it's a good weapon to have because she relies on her blasters and her Mandalorian instincts. And when push comes to shove, she'll finally whip out the lightsaber and she's okay with it. So I think either that's conflict within her, not believing in herself to really be able to hone in on her skills of being some form of a Jedi or a skilled lightsaber user, or she's accepted that it's kind of more like a thing I do on the side, but it's not my main gig. I'm a Mandalorian. And so because of that Mandalorianship, it actually helped her kind of little bubbles. It helped her form some form of quick alliance and friendship with these little rock people who end up taking her to Ezra. I mean, I did not expect to get Ezra in this at most, which did happen. We got him at the very end, bearded up, semi-long hair, looking like Aladdin, ready to do his thing, and we're gonna see if he does his thing. Now, here's where I had a problem with emotion again because we finally could have got Sabine be more in her feelings because she cared about Ezra so much throughout Rebel, or not Rebels, at the end of Rebels, really, right? But then throughout this show, and she sacrificed the galaxy to get Ezra, and you meet him, and it's like there is no real emotion there. Now, I don't know what you were thinking about his comment he made in episode 1, calling her like a sister. I think that should have easily been blocked out. I don't even think that was a thought. The direction they took Sabine to embrace Ezra, I think, was very underwhelming and weak. She should have been crying. She should have been super watery eyed. She should have been sniffling. She should have been so much more flustered than how they presented it. And I don't know if it's the lack of chemistry that her and the Ezra actor has right now, or simply put, they just directed her wrong, or she took it upon herself to act very wrong in this moment of reuniting with Ezra. And Ezra seemed like he was, I don't want to say necessarily emotional, but he was definitely like happy, delighted to see her, and a sigh of relief that she did come to try to help save him. So I found that I didn't like that. That was a disconnect for me right there. But what was funny was the banter afterwards about leaving, and she hadn't really told me, but you could see in her face like, yeah, about leaving. So I kind of like hooked up with the bad guys. Like, I can't wait to hear that conversation in episode 7. The fact we still have 2 more episodes and we got a lore dump, Thrawn, and Ezra in episode 6 is super fire. So I think episode 7, we're going to get the conversation. We're going to get some, if not flashback, of what happened to Ezra and Thrawn in episode 7. We're definitely going to get some level of flashbacks. We might get flashbacks with Anakin and Ahsoka too, but I think that potentially could be in episode 8. Episode 8 could be well over an hour, in my opinion, because I think we're going to get a very decent level of, if not lore dump, like finality for this season and potentially series, because this is supposed to help lead into like an all-out movie. So I think episode 7 is going to definitely be the penultimate episode, as they call it, but it's going to be a lot of build-up in terms of Ezra and Sabine hashing it out, Ahsoka showing up, potentially having another flashback with Anakin while she's having the story time with Huyang, Baylan and Shin meeting up, finding Ezra and Sabine, and we get a 2-on-2, or essentially they split off 1v1 action with Ezra versus Baylan. And Ezra's probably going to best Baylan. And then Sabine versus Shin again. And this time, Sabine may have some level of force activity to help give her a slight edge in besting Shin. That's my prediction for episode 7. And then episode 8 is going to be whether or not there's any survivors from these 2 matches. Maybe Ahsoka shows up at the end, but it's going to be Ahsoka, Huyang, Sabine, Ezra, potentially Baylan if he survives and turns, versus Thrawn and his army, along with whatever happens with Elsbeth and the Great Mothers, because I heard something about the catacombs and them basically needing 3 days to do something. I think they're going to try to resurrect some help to fight Ezra and the crew. So I think we're getting an all-out battle in episode 8 to end Ahsoka season 1, potentially even the series. So that's my thoughts on Ahsoka episodes 4, 5, and 6. At minimum, each got an 8.5 out of 10. I believe I gave 4 and 5 a 9 and a 9.5 out of 10. And then I gave this episode an 8.5. A point lower just because not a lot of action, and the action we did get, it could have been touched upon a lot more. Like, it could have been a little better. But I didn't fault it for that. And then the lack of Ahsoka really in this episode, and that's pretty much it. And a strong 8.5 for sure, because I love the lore. I love the fact that we go to this brand new planet, expanding the world of Star Wars and the galaxy. We're getting more Dathomirian lore and knowledge. We're getting Thrawn. We got Ezra. Balin stepped up in this episode. And it's so unfortunate because Balin, we know the actor Ray Stevenson passed away. So whatever plans they potentially have for him now goes down the drain if he does survive in this show. Of course, they'll probably have to kill him off screen, but if he does survive this show, it's unfortunate because we waited to episode 6 to really kind of get a little bit more out of him, and we'll probably get more out of him in episode 7 as well, with him and Shin, him really, unveiling more of himself to who we think to be his daughter, and Shin. We'll get more story there as well from him. So I think it's gonna be a buildup of Balin for sure, a catch up of Ezra and potentially Thrawn, all leading into some good battles. And then if Balin makes it, maybe sacrifice himself in episode 8, and then unfortunately it works out because we won't have Ray Stevenson going forward, which again is unfortunate to hear, man. But yes, great show so far, and I think this is gonna be one of the first shows outside of Mando season 2 to stick the landing of the show. And you could almost say that for any Disney Plus show, but sticking the landing will be Mando season 2, and I mean you can kind of argue season 1, but definitely season 2, and then Ahsoka season 1. Landing the plane correctly. Shows have not been landing well on Disney Plus, and I think we're gonna see that here with this show. Whew. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What you guys think about Ahsoka? Was it good to you? Did you enjoy it? What are you looking forward to? Are you having fun? Are you also hating on the haters for being too unnecessarily nitpicky? Granted, there's some understandability there because Star Wars is giving them borderline that permission, but we gotta when things are actually hopeful, start looking and leaning into that and look for reasons why it's good, and maybe actually listen to the Star Wars fans that's explaining to y'all what's happening in the show, so that way your questions become answered and you can find a way to enjoy it more, as opposed to always looking through the lens of finding problems, because that's real easy to do. But with this show, I think it's legitimately harder, and the things you're nitpicking at is contradictory to what you've complained about with other shows, including Star Wars and movies. Now we're getting better storytelling, better directing, better acting, better scripting, and better, I don't want to say screenplay, but better camera work. Start looking for the positives because Star Wars needs it. But hey, again, if you guys haven't already, make sure to like the like button, subscribe to the channel, the notification bell, so my videos on my occasional live streams. So in my videos, and Micah sign out to the next video. May the force be with you. Wait for it.